What if 42 children vanished into the cold, silent night, leaving behind only empty beds and a town haunted by a mystery that refused to die? Over 70 years later, advanced sonar and artificial intelligence uncover the shocking truth beneath the frozen waters of Lake Shigawa, a truth that nobody could have predicted. This isn't just a cold case. This is a digital resurrection of history's darkest secret. Tonight, we embark on a journey into the heart of an unsolved mystery that has haunted Minnesota for decades. In the dead of winter, 42 children disappeared from the Ojibwe boarding school, leaving behind no clues, only cold and silence. For decades, the investigation remained stagnant, until a team of modern-day investigators stumbled upon something beneath the ice of Lake Shigawa that would finally reveal the chilling truth. Through cutting-edge AI and sonar scans, we'll peel back the layers of time and uncover what really happened on that frozen night in 1954. Stick with us as we uncover a hidden chapter of American history that was buried under ice, and why it's more terrifying than anyone could have imagined. In the remote northern forests of Minnesota, winter always came early and stayed late. By January 1954, the small Ojibwe settlement near Lake Shigawa was accustomed to the biting cold. But what happened that winter was anything but ordinary. The Ojibwe settlement was home to the small boarding school where 42 children, ranging in age from 6 to 14, lived and learned. It wasn't much of a school in the conventional sense, more like a safe haven for children of the Ojibwe tribe. It was isolated, nestled in the woods near the frozen expanse of Lake Shigawa, a place where nature still ruled over everything. These children, many of whom had been sent here for their protection and education, were far removed from the bustling world outside. And yet, despite this seclusion, their fate would soon become part of a mystery that would evade answers for generations. January 12th arrived like any other. The children went to bed after a day of winter activities, sledding, ice skating, and gathering around the fire for stories. But by the next morning, everything changed. Sheriff Mauricio Johnson, a seasoned veteran of northern Minnesota winters, arrived to find the school empty. No children, no signs of struggle. The beds, once filled with restless sleepers, were now eerily neat and untouched. The doors were locked from the inside, a strange and unexplainable detail. The sheriff trudged through the deep snow, searching for any trace, footprints, sled tracks, anything that would lead him to the missing children, but there was nothing. "I called for them," he later reported. "I shouted their names into the wind, but all I heard back was silence. And that was it. No trace of the children. The snow had erased all evidence, the wind had scattered any signs that might have been left. There were whispers from locals, tales of strange shadows seen moving near the treeline the night before, but no one could confirm these sightings. The children had vanished, and with them, all hope for understanding." Sheriff Johnson and his deputies combed the area for days, their breath visible in the cold air, their faces hardened against the biting winds. But no clues emerged. Families arrived, frantic, desperate to find any sign of their missing children. But every lead they followed ended in confusion. There were no witnesses, no trail, no answers. In the absence of any evidence, Sheriff Johnson made the only conclusion he could: a weather tragedy. A freak storm, he suggested, may have swept the children away into the wilderness. It was a tragic accident. The snowstorm had covered any trace of the children, and they had been lost in its fury. But those who lived in the community knew better. There was something more to this story, something that didn't add up. It couldn't just be a snowstorm. 42 children didn't vanish like that. They weren't lost, they were gone. And for years, that question would hang over Lake Shigawa like a dark cloud, unanswered. Decades passed. The story of the missing children became a footnote in the history of the Ojibwe settlement, a mystery whispered about in hushed tones, a tragedy that had no resolution. The investigation was closed, the case left cold, and the families left to grieve without closure. In 2021, nearly 7 decades later, a team of sonar specialists arrived at Lake Shigawa for an ecological survey. Their goal was simple: to map the lake bed and measure environmental changes. But their sonar equipment detected something unusual, something they couldn't explain. Beneath the thick ice, buried 30 feet below the surface, was a massive, long, metallic structure. The shape was too precise, too unnatural to be part of the lake's geological formations. Initially, the team thought it was a malfunction, a glitch in the system. But further scans confirmed it again and again. Something massive, was buried beneath the ice. Divers were sent down to investigate. What they found, however, was beyond comprehension. The footage they captured was quickly seized by authorities, and the investigation was shut down almost as quickly as it had begun. Public statements from the research team disappeared within hours. The footage was classified. For a brief moment, the world knew that something strange had been uncovered beneath Lake Shigawa. But within hours, it was hidden again, locked away, just like the mystery of the 42 missing children. However, a digital forensics lab managed to access leaked sonar data. What they uncovered was nothing short of horrifying. Using the sonar data, historical weather records, and AI-enhanced voice transcripts, the lab began to reconstruct the data from the original scans. And the results they revealed were chilling. What was hidden beneath the ice was not a natural formation, but an artificial structure, a large metallic vault, sealed shut beneath the frozen waters. The AI reconstruction suggested that the structure was not merely abandoned or forgotten. It was placed there, deliberately, and the design was too precise to be an accident. The structure's dimensions and location aligned with the very place where the children had disappeared in 1954. At first, the idea seemed too outlandish to consider. How could the children have been led to this frozen vault? How could such an event have been hidden for so long? But as the AI began to piece together the puzzle, a horrifying picture began to emerge. The initial investigation in 1954 had only been able to scratch the surface. Sheriff Johnson's team had done what they could with the primitive tools available to them at the time. But now, nearly 70 years later, the technology existed to reveal the full scale of the tragedy. Sonar scans of the lakebed, combined with AI analysis, allowed the team to digitally reconstruct the paths the children may have taken on that fateful night. The analysis showed a coordinated movement, with the children likely guided toward the lake. They weren't lost in the snow, they were led there. But who had led them? And why? The AI model began to offer more answers. As it analyzed the paths the children had taken, it revealed an eerie pattern, a deliberate trajectory leading straight toward the lake, toward the hidden structures beneath the ice. The structure, which had once been dismissed as a random anomaly, was now seen as something far more sinister. The children hadn't just disappeared. They had been taken somewhere. The AI-enhanced data further revealed something more horrifying. The structures beneath the ice were man-made. They weren't natural formations or abandoned relics, they were compartments designed to hold something, or someone. And the AI cross-referenced historical weather data, revealing that the conditions on that night were ideal for such a trap. The snowstorm would have covered any trace of the children's movements, and the ice would have concealed them from sight. As the data continued to unfold, the emotional impact was undeniable. The disappearance wasn't a tragic accident, it was a carefully orchestrated event, planned and executed with chilling precision. The children hadn't vanished into the wilderness, they had been taken, held, and hidden beneath the ice. The mystery that had baffled investigators for 70 years was finally being cracked open. For the first time in history, the truth about what happened on that cold winter night was becoming clear. The children had been led to their doom, and the people responsible had left behind a trail that modern technology could now follow. The investigation, once considered a cold case, was now a full-blown revelation. But the real question remained: who had orchestrated this atrocity? And why? After months of analyzing the data, the investigators were able to present a chilling conclusion. The children were led into the lake, guided by unknown individuals. The sonar data showed the compartments beneath the ice were carefully designed to conceal something, or someone. The AI's predictive models recreated the children's movements, simulating their path across the frozen landscape. It was clear that the children had been trapped, taken to these hidden compartments, and confined there. As the investigators continued to piece together the timeline, they could see how each piece of evidence, each minor inconsistency in the original investigation, had now come together to reveal the horrifying truth. The children weren't lost in a storm. They had been taken. Families of the missing children, once left with only questions, were now faced with answers. The closure that had eluded them for decades was finally within reach. The cold case was no longer cold. The truth had been dug up from beneath layers of ice, and the investigation was just beginning. But the question remained: who were the perpetrators, and why had they done this? The investigation was far from over. The 3D reconstructions, the sonar data, the AI-enhanced models, these were just the beginning. The secrets of Lake Shigawa were far from being fully uncovered, and the investigation into what happened that night in 1954 would continue. For now, one thing was certain: the truth was no longer frozen in time. If you found this story as chilling as we did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more updates. We want to hear your thoughts. What do you think happened to the children of Lake Shigawa? Share your theories in the comments, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't miss out on future episodes as we dig deeper into this chilling case. Beneath the frozen waters of Lake Shigawa lies a chilling secret, a man-made structure, sealed in ice for nearly 7 decades. But what could have been hidden here? As the investigation delves deeper, the disturbing truth begins to surface. Who was behind the vault, and what are they trying to hide? In our last chapter, we uncovered a mystery that's been frozen beneath Lake Shigawa for 70 years, compartments buried under the ice, seemingly designed to conceal something, or someone. But the more we dig, the deeper the mystery becomes. What were these vaults really for? And could they hold the answers to the tragic disappearance of 42 children? Join us as we continue to piece together this haunting puzzle and reveal secrets that have been buried for decades. When the sonar scans revealed the large metallic structure beneath Lake Shigawa, the investigators thought they were dealing with a relic of the past, an accidental piece of debris. But as they examined the data, something more sinister began to take shape. These weren't just random objects that had sunk into the lake. What lay beneath the ice was a coordinated design, carefully planned, engineered, and sealed to remain hidden for decades. The initial discovery set off a series of questions. What was it? What purpose did it serve? And why was it buried under layers of frozen water? The team of investigators, now working with experts in sonar imaging and AI-driven analysis, began to compare the lakebed's current layout with historical records from the 1954 investigation. The patterns began to emerge, revealing an unsettling connection. The vaults weren't just random, they were built with intent. In 1954, the original investigation into the disappearance of 42 children had been hampered by a lack of technological tools. Sheriff Mauricio Johnson's search had been exhaustive, but without digital maps, advanced forensics, or even the ability to track weather patterns in real time, he had been left to follow fragmented clues. And despite his best efforts, the investigation ended with no answers, only grief. But now, modern tools could cross-reference the weather patterns of that night, the school's layout, and even old witness accounts to build a clearer picture. What had originally seemed like an inexplicable disappearance was now beginning to resemble a much darker plan, a plan that had been set in motion long before that cold January night. The vaults beneath Lake Shigawa weren't just unusual for their size. They were strategically positioned in a way that suggested they weren't designed to be discovered. The sonar scans indicated an ordered arrangement of compartments, as if they were placed with the intent to hide something, perhaps people. But who could have hidden something, or someone, beneath the ice for decades? As the sonar team worked tirelessly, the AI-driven algorithms began to piece together a timeline of events, cross-referencing witness statements, the children's known movements, and the data from the lake's sonar scans. The timeline began to reveal a disturbing sequence of events leading up to that fateful night in 1954. Witnesses who had reported strange figures near the treeline in the days before the children disappeared were now shown to be telling the truth. An elderly woman, Evelyn Whitecloud, had witnessed odd nocturnal activity near the lake in the days leading up to the disappearance. Her account was dismissed by local authorities at the time as wild speculation. But now, with the help of modern technology, her observations took on a chilling significance. In the days before the children vanished, Evelyn had seen figures, unfamiliar faces, shadows moving through the woods. But what disturbed her the most was the sense that these figures were waiting. They weren't passing through, they were waiting for something. Had they been waiting for the children? Was this all part of a coordinated plan to guide them toward the lake? If so, why? The AI analysis confirmed that the children's movements on the night of their disappearance weren't random. They had followed a clear, deliberate path toward the lake, one that could only have been guided by someone who knew the area well. As investigators reconstructed the children's journey, something eerie began to unfold. The children had been led into the forest, where they encountered snowdrifts so deep that they would have been nearly impossible to navigate alone. The snowstorm that hit that night should have obliterated any trace of their movement, but somehow, the path they followed was clear. The AI suggested that someone, or something, had been helping them. The notion of external actors guiding the children became more plausible. The vaults beneath the ice were not merely hiding the children, they were built to conceal them, to trap them in a place where they could never be found. The breakthrough came when the digital forensics team unearthed a disturbing piece of evidence. A series of school records from 1954, which had been long ignored, revealed that several children marked as absent that year had never actually left the school. Instead, they had been transferred to other locations that weren't on any official documents. These entries were buried deep in the records, unnoticed by investigators at the time, but now, with the help of AI analysis, these discrepancies were impossible to ignore. The names of these children began to emerge, and the connections became chilling. They were linked to the mysterious vaults beneath the lake. The school logs had been deliberately altered to cover up their movements. But why? Was this an attempt to erase the truth? To hide the evidence of what had really happened? The most unsettling part was the discovery that these children, marked absent in the school records, had never been reported missing. They had simply vanished from the official accounts, as though they had never existed. Their names had been scrubbed from the records. When investigators cross-referenced these children with the vaults beneath the ice, something horrifying became clear. These children had been part of a larger plan, one that involved removing them from the public eye and placing them in the vaults hidden beneath Lake Shigawa. The vaults were not just a containment device, they were a final resting place, sealed off from the world. Children. The more the team investigated, the more pieces they uncovered. The vaults were not accidental, they had been designed with chilling precision. Their purpose wasn't just to hold the children, it was to hide them from the world. And the more the AI reconstructed the events of that fateful night, the clearer it became, someone had orchestrated this, someone who had known exactly what they were doing. As the investigation neared its conclusion, the full scale of the tragedy began to surface. The vaults beneath Lake Shigawa had been meticulously constructed, their purpose now undeniable. They were not the remnants of a forgotten disaster, they were the deliberate design of individuals who sought to conceal the fate of 42 innocent children. The final breakthrough came when the team recovered a set of photographs taken during the original investigation. These photographs, which had long been stored away in dusty archives, showed something previously unnoticed, the faint outlines of a structure beneath the ice. It was barely visible at the time, but now, with the help of AI-enhanced imaging, the photographs revealed an unmistakable pattern, what appeared to be a series of interconnected compartments. The recovered artifacts from the vaults, fragments of clothing, small toys, and remnants of personal belongings, matched perfectly with descriptions from the school records. These were the missing children. Their belongings had been left behind, as if they had been abandoned in a hurry. The chilling truth was finally coming to light. But the most pressing question remained, who was behind this? Who had created these vaults and orchestrated the children's disappearance? The investigation was far from over, but with every new discovery, the pieces were slowly falling into place. The haunting mystery of Lake Shigawa, once considered unsolvable, was now on the brink of resolution. The truth was within reach. And with it, the full horror of what had happened in January 1954. The investigation would continue, and with every new piece of evidence, the dark secrets of Lake Shigawa would be exposed. Do you think the vaults beneath Lake Shigawa hold the full truth about the children's disappearance? Who do you think was behind this conspiracy? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter, where we uncover even more chilling details about the fate of 42 missing. The vaults beneath Lake Shigawa hold a secret that's been buried for 70 years, but the truth is finally emerging. As the investigation inches closer to the heart of the mystery, the chilling details reveal something even more horrifying. The children's disappearance wasn't an accident, it was orchestrated. But who was behind this, and what happened to them? In the previous chapters, we uncovered a web of secrets buried beneath Lake Shigawa, a series of vaults that hid the fate of 42 missing children. But the mystery didn't stop there. As new evidence is revealed, the investigation takes an even darker turn. Who constructed these vaults, and why did they hide the children? Join us as we dive deeper into the shadowy past of Lake Shigawa and discover the chilling truth behind the disappearance of 42 innocent lives. As the investigation continued, one fact became undeniable: the vaults were built with purpose. The compartments beneath Lake Shigawa were not the result of natural phenomena, and they certainly weren't accidental. Every piece of evidence pointed to an intricate design, one that had been meticulously crafted to conceal the children from the world. But who would go to such lengths? Who would orchestrate such a heinous act, planning the abduction of 42 children and burying them beneath the ice? The sonar scans had revealed that the vaults were more than just containers, they were part of a larger, carefully designed system. The compartments were connected in a specific order, and the layout was consistent across the lakebed. It wasn't just a random scattering of structures, it was an engineered scheme to keep something hidden. The investigators turned their attention to the few leads that had survived over the years. Local records from the 1950s had been sparse, but when combined with modern AI analysis, they began to suggest a pattern, a hidden network of people who had been in the area at the time of the children's disappearance. These individuals, long forgotten by the community, might hold the key to understanding what happened. As the team sifted through old archives, the name that kept resurfacing was Evelyn Whitecloud, the teacher who had witnessed strange activity near the lake in the days leading up to the disappearance. Her account, previously dismissed as irrelevant, now appeared to be one of the most crucial pieces of the puzzle. Her observations had described strange figures near the treeline, and now, for the first time, they could be analyzed in the context of the vaults. The AI-driven investigation suggested that these figures were not random wanderers, they were guides, leading the children towards their eventual fate. The vaults under the ice had been constructed long before the children disappeared, and someone had been waiting for the perfect moment to execute their plan. But the deeper the team dug, the more questions emerged. The evidence suggested that this conspiracy had deep roots, far deeper than anyone could have imagined. The vaults beneath Lake Shigawa were not merely passive structures, they were part of a larger, orchestrated plan. But what was the ultimate goal? What could justify the abduction and imprisonment of 42 children? The investigation team began to focus on the possible motives behind such an operation. The children, mostly from the Ojibwe tribe, had no obvious connection to a specific political or economic agenda. Their disappearance wasn't a ransom or a political act, it was something more insidious. As the AI simulations continued to build up the timeline of events, a chilling pattern began to form. The vaults weren't just hiding the children, they were built to conceal something else entirely. The designs of the compartments suggested they were intended for long-term storage, not just a temporary holding place. Some of the vaults had strange markings, symbols and numbers etched into the metal walls, possibly indicating that they weren't meant to be uncovered for decades. The investigators also discovered records of unusual deliveries to the Ojibwe school during the winter of 1954, deliveries of materials that could be used for construction. These deliveries had been logged under vague entries, with minimal details. They were classified as miscellaneous equipment, but the more the investigators dug into the records, the more they realized that these deliveries coincided with key events leading up to the children's disappearance. It wasn't just that the children had been led into the forest and toward the lake, they had been prepared for something. The strange deliveries, combined with the hidden compartments beneath the ice, hinted at a larger plan, a plan that involved more than just a group of kidnappers. The vaults, it seemed, were not designed to hold the children for long. The investigators began to suspect that there was a much darker motive at play, a motive that might explain the disturbing lack of evidence after the children disappeared. But there was still so much they didn't understand. Who was involved? Who could have orchestrated such a horrific plan, and how did they manage to keep it hidden for so long? The breakthrough came when a digital reconstruction of the events leading up to the disappearance of the children revealed an unexpected twist. The AI model, which had been painstakingly piecing together the children's movements and the placement of the vaults, now pointed to an even more chilling possibility. The movements of the children had not been random. They had been guided by adults, but not just any adults. The AI identified figures who had been in the area during the time of the disappearance. The paths they took, combined with witness statements, revealed a calculated plan to lead the children directly to the lake, to the vaults that awaited them. But the most shocking revelation came when the AI began to link the construction of the vaults to a specific group of individuals who had been involved with the Ojibwe tribe in the 1950s. These figures were not outsiders, but people who had worked closely with the community. Local leaders, school officials, and even government agents were found to have had access to the area during that time. The connection between these people and the mysterious vaults suggested that the children's disappearance was not just an isolated tragedy, it was part of a larger, more coordinated effort. The vaults were designed to keep something hidden, and the children had been chosen to play a pivotal role in whatever that plan was. The AI simulations revealed that the children's movements, along with the coordinated activities of these adults, had been part of an operation that had been planned months in advance. The vaults were not meant to be discovered for decades. They were constructed with one goal in mind: to keep the children, and the truth, hidden beneath the ice until the time was right. But what was the endgame? What could have been so valuable that 42 innocent lives had been sacrificed to conceal it? As the investigation reached its peak, the pieces of the puzzle started to fall into place. The vaults beneath Lake Shagawa were no longer just a mysterious discovery, they were the key to understanding the children's disappearance. And with the AI simulations now complete, the investigators had one final, chilling realization: this was not just about hiding the children, it was about keeping a secret buried. But the true nature of the secret was still elusive. The vaults, the records, the strange deliveries, they all pointed to something far more insidious than anyone had imagined. The children had been hidden away for a reason, and that reason was now closer to being revealed. The investigation was far from over, but what had started as a cold case had transformed into something far more disturbing. The truth about Lake Shagawa, once frozen in time, was beginning to thaw. What do you think the vaults beneath Lake Shagawa were hiding? Who do you believe was behind this dark conspiracy? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates as we continue to uncover the shocking truth. Turn on notifications so you won't miss the next chapter, where we dive even deeper into the mystery of the missing children. The vaults beneath Lake Shagawa are no accident. They weren't just built to hide 42 children, they were built to hide something far more dangerous. As the investigation digs deeper, the truth behind the vaults begins to unravel, revealing a conspiracy that stretches beyond the disappearance itself. In the last chapter, we uncovered a chilling reality: the disappearance of 42 children wasn't just an isolated tragedy, it was part of a much larger conspiracy. With AI simulations, historical data, and eyewitness accounts, we've started to piece together a story of premeditated plans and hidden agendas. But what were these vaults really meant to conceal? And how far does this mystery really go? Join us as we take a deeper dive into the vault's secrets and the darkness that lies within them. The discovery of the vaults beneath Lake Shagawa raised more questions than answers. What had initially seemed like a cold case, frozen in time, was now a labyrinth of intrigue. The vaults weren't just designed to hide the children, they were built with careful precision, suggesting a purpose beyond mere containment. Investigators had uncovered enough physical evidence to confirm that the vaults were connected to the missing children, but the question remained: what were the vaults meant to conceal? The AI-driven analysis, which had pieced together the children's movements, pointed to a larger conspiracy, but the nature of that conspiracy was still shrouded in mystery. As the team dove deeper into the school's records, a disturbing pattern emerged. These vaults hadn't been constructed haphazardly, they were meticulously planned, and someone had known exactly where and when to build them. The mysterious deliveries of building materials, logged under vague entries, began to make more sense. These materials were not for routine repairs, they were for something much more insidious. The vaults, it seemed, weren't just constructed to hide the children's disappearance, they were part of a grander scheme. The investigators were closing in on a dark secret, one that had been buried beneath Lake Shigawa for more than 70 years. As the investigation progressed, the team focused on a particular area of the vaults, a compartment that seemed to stand out from the rest. The layout of the vaults, once again analyzed by AI, showed that one compartment had been designed differently from the others. It was larger, reinforced, and had an elaborate locking mechanism. What was inside it? And why was it so different? The sonar scans had already revealed that this vault was in an area of the lake where the ice was thickest. It was a place that would have been almost impossible to access, even for the most experienced divers. But why place the most important vault in such a difficult-to-reach location? The AI model suggested that the vault might have been constructed to hold something other than the children. The researchers ran simulations that combined environmental factors, ice thickness, and historical weather data. The simulations indicated that whoever had planned this had accounted for every possible variable, including how long the vaults would remain hidden. It became clear, the vaults were not just hiding the children, they were hiding something far more dangerous. But what could be so valuable, so explosive, that it required the disappearance of an entire school of children and a carefully concealed vault under 30 feet of ice? The investigators had uncovered a pattern, but there were still too many missing pieces. The more they dug, the more evidence they found, but the greater the mystery became. Was there something more to the vaults than just the children's fate? The breakthrough came when they revisited the strange markings found on the walls of the vaults. These symbols were not random, they had meaning. The markings, when analyzed, resembled a complex code, one that didn't seem to fit the era in which they had been written. It was as if the vaults weren't just a physical containment, they were a message. But a message for whom? The investigators turned to experts in cryptography, trying to decipher the meaning behind the symbols. But what they found only deepened the mystery. The markings on the walls of the vaults pointed to an underground network, a shadow organization that had ties to powerful figures, both locally and nationally. The AI had found connections that suggested the vaults were built with resources far beyond the capabilities of a small boarding school. As the team uncovered more records, they began to piece together the names of key players involved in the mysterious operation. These individuals, whose names had been buried in obscure records, were now emerging as key figures in a web of conspiracy that spanned decades. The climactic breakthrough came when the team uncovered a set of photographs from the original 1954 investigation. These images, once thought to be inconclusive, revealed an unsettling detail. A group of men, wearing military-style uniforms, had been seen near the lake around the time of the children's disappearance. The photographs, when compared to historical records, showed that these men had ties to government agencies that had been involved in secretive operations during the Cold War. The investigators were stunned. Could these men be the key to understanding why the children had been hidden away? Had the vaults beneath Lake Shigawa been built to conceal something far more dangerous than just a group of missing children? As the AI simulations continued to reveal more data, the pieces of the puzzle began to align. These men, who were once thought to be insignificant by the original investigators, were now emerging as central figures in a covert operation that had spanned decades. The vaults, it seemed, had not been constructed solely to hide the children, they had been constructed to conceal something far darker. The AI revealed a disturbing connection between these men and a larger organization that had operated in the shadows. Their purpose? To use the children as pawns in a covert operation that had been decades in the making. The vaults were part of a grander plan, one that involved experimentation and manipulation on a scale no one had imagined. The team was left reeling from the revelations. The vaults were not merely hiding the children, they were hiding evidence of a conspiracy so vast and so secretive that it had remained hidden for over 70 years. The investigation had uncovered a truth more horrifying than anyone could have imagined. The children had been part of something much larger, something that had been orchestrated by powerful figures with far-reaching influence. The investigation reached its critical turning point as the team pieced together the final details. The vaults beneath Lake Shigawa were not just a physical containment, they were the final resting place of a tragic chapter in American history. But they also held the key to understanding a larger conspiracy, one that had been carefully orchestrated by powerful individuals who had used the children as pawns in a covert operation. With the AI simulations, historical records, and photographs now complete, the investigation was able to connect the dots. The vaults, with their strange symbols, their elaborate designs, and their hidden compartments, had been built to conceal not just the children, but a secret that had been buried for decades. The final confirmation came when divers, guided by the digital models, explored the last remaining compartments. Inside, they found remnants of documents and artifacts that had long been hidden beneath the ice. These items were evidence of a larger operation, an operation that had involved multiple government agencies, shadow organizations, and figures of influence who had kept the truth hidden for far too long. The lake, once a frozen graveyard, was now a testament to the power of modern technology. The vaults, once thought to be an accident, were now revealed as the centerpiece of a larger, coordinated effort to conceal the truth. But the story didn't end there. The investigation was far from over. The truth about Lake Shigawa was slowly emerging, but there were still many unanswered questions. What had happened to the children? Why had they been chosen? And who were the people behind this conspiracy? The investigation had uncovered a hidden chapter of history, but the full story was still waiting to be told. What do you think the vaults beneath Lake Shigawa were really hiding? Who do you believe was behind this dark conspiracy, and what do you think their motives were? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates as we continue to uncover the shocking truth. Turn on notifications so you won't miss the next chapter in this unraveling mystery. What if the mystery behind the missing children was part of a grander, more sinister plan? The vaults beneath Lake Shigawa hid more than just their tragic fate, they concealed a web of conspiracy that spanned decades. Now, the investigation uncovers a dark network that orchestrated this horrifying scheme. But who could have such power? In the previous chapter, we revealed how the vaults beneath Lake Shigawa were not merely hiding children, they were part of a much larger conspiracy. With connections to powerful figures, shadowy organizations, and covert operations, the vaults became the chilling center of a far-reaching plan. But what was the true purpose behind it all? Who are these people pulling the strings? Join us as we uncover the dark network that made this nightmare possible, and learn how far this conspiracy stretches. The vaults beneath Lake Shigawa were no longer just a mystery, they were the key to unraveling a dark conspiracy that had remained hidden for over 70 years. The disturbing findings, hidden documents, strange symbols, and encrypted messages, suggested that the children were not just. The vaults beneath Lake Shigawa were no longer just a mystery, they were the key to unraveling a dark conspiracy that had remained hidden for over 70 years. The disturbing findings, hidden documents, strange symbols, and encrypted messages, suggested that the children were not just victims of a random abduction, they had been selected for something far more sinister. As the investigators dug deeper into the vault's origins, they discovered something even more chilling. The conspiracy didn't begin in 1954. It had been years in the making, stretching back long before the children were led to the lake. The vaults were part of a much larger operation, one that had begun under the radar, involving a network of powerful individuals and organizations who had been pulling strings in the shadows. The clues began to paint a disturbing picture. The vaults weren't just a place of containment, they were designed to hide the children, yes, but also to hide the activities of a covert network that had been operating for decades. The vaults had been strategically placed, and their construction had been funded by resources that didn't belong to any local group or government agency. These were not just people looking to escape the law, they were working on a much bigger agenda. The AI-driven investigation uncovered something that made the conspiracy even more terrifying. The individuals involved weren't just local figures, they were linked to high-level players, including government agencies, private contractors, and international organizations that had operated under a veil of secrecy. It became clear that these vaults were not just hiding children, they were designed to conceal something much more dangerous, a global network that had been experimenting on these children for reasons that were still unclear. As the investigators began piecing together the details of this dark network, they made a horrifying discovery. The strange symbols etched into the vaults weren't just random, they were part of a coded message that could only be understood by those involved in the conspiracy. Each symbol told a part of the story, a part that had remained hidden for decades. The AI system worked tirelessly to decode the messages, comparing the symbols with known encryption systems from the Cold War era. The breakthrough came when a connection was made between the symbols and a secretive project that had been rumored in intelligence circles during the 1950s, a project that involved the manipulation and testing of individuals in controlled environments. The project was known as Operation Shadow, and though details of its existence had been wiped from government archives, it was believed to be an experimental program aimed at testing psychological and physical endurance under extreme conditions. The children, it seemed, had been caught in the crossfire of this operation, selected not for their backgrounds, but for their ability to withstand intense psychological manipulation. The vaults had been the perfect place for these experiments. Isolated, under layers of ice, the children had been exposed to unknown forces that were being tracked by the organizations behind Operation Shadow. What had initially seemed like a case of missing children was now unraveling into something more terrifying, a conspiracy that had spanned continents and decades, one designed to manipulate and control. As the team dug deeper into the project's history, they uncovered the names of several prominent figures associated with it. These names had long been associated with intelligence agencies, covert military operations, and even pharmaceutical companies. But now, the connection was undeniable. The same people who had worked on Operation Shadow had a hand in constructing the vaults. And the most shocking part? Some of these individuals were still alive today, holding positions of power in influential sectors. The investigators were now faced with a horrifying truth: the missing children weren't the only victims of this dark network. The vaults had been just one part of a larger system, one that had been protecting itself for decades. The emotional climax came when the team uncovered a shocking personal connection between the children and the conspirators. Using DNA analysis and cross-referencing school records, the AI uncovered a deep connection between the Ojibwe tribe and key figures involved in the operation. Some of the children who had disappeared were related to individuals with direct ties to the organizations behind the vaults. The most unsettling revelation was the discovery of a document from the 1940s, decades before the children were abducted. It was a contract between the U.S. government and a secretive organization known as Elysium Technologies, which had been tasked with conducting experiments on indigenous populations. The contract stipulated that these experiments would involve psychological conditioning, manipulation, and endurance trials, experiments designed to study human resilience under extreme conditions. The Ojibwe tribe, a close-knit community, had been unknowingly targeted for their isolation. Children were selected not for their abilities, but because of their ancestral ties. Something about their genetic makeup made them ideal candidates for these experiments. The vaults had been built specifically for them, to keep them in a controlled environment where they could be studied away from the outside world. The most disturbing part was the realization that some of these experiments were not just psychological, they were biological in nature. The AI simulations suggested that some children had been genetically altered or used in biological studies to create a new breed of human, one that could endure extreme psychological and environmental conditions. For the families of the missing children, this revelation was devastating. The truth that had been hidden for so long had finally come to light. The vaults weren't just a containment system, they were a graveyard of secrets, and the children had paid the ultimate price. But there was still more to uncover. The investigators now had to face the larger question: how far did this conspiracy go? Was the operation still active? And if so, who was continuing the experiments? The team now understood that they weren't just uncovering a tragic disappearance, they were revealing a global operation that had been operating in the shadows. As the investigation neared its conclusion, the team was faced with the chilling reality that the conspiracy was far from over. The vaults, once thought to be the center of the mystery, were just the beginning. The network behind Operation Shadow had evolved, spreading its influence into new fields: medicine, military intelligence, and private corporations. But with each new revelation, the investigators began to piece together the final pieces of the puzzle. The vaults had been designed not just as a hiding place for the children, but as a means of hiding the truth from the world. The conspiracy was designed to remain buried beneath the ice, to stay hidden from the public eye until the right moment. The final pieces of evidence came when the team uncovered current-day connections to the conspiracy. The same individuals who had been involved in the creation of the vaults were now in positions of power, pulling strings from behind the scenes. The network had adapted and survived, and the truth was still being concealed. The children, it seemed, were just one chapter in a much darker story. The investigation had uncovered a disturbing reality: these vaults, these experiments, were not isolated, they were part of a larger agenda to control and manipulate. But the team wasn't done yet. They had uncovered the truth, but now they needed to expose it to the world. The network had survived for decades, but now the investigators were determined to bring the truth to light. The children who had disappeared, and the families who had been left in the dark, would finally get the answers they had waited so long for. But the question still remained: would exposing the conspiracy put an end to the dark network, or would it be silenced once again? Engagement prompt. The vaults beneath Lake Shigawa were just the beginning of a much larger conspiracy. Who do you think was behind this network, and what do you believe their true purpose was? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter, where we continue to expose the shocking truth behind Lake Shigawa. Behind every hidden secret lies a network of power, and the more the investigation unfolds, the more we uncover a shadowy world that has been operating in plain sight. What if the children of Lake Shigawa were only the tip of the iceberg? What if this conspiracy reaches the highest levels of government and corporate influence? In the last chapter, we learned that the vaults beneath Lake Shigawa were not just for containment, they were designed to protect a global conspiracy that has remained hidden for decades. The children's disappearance was a small part of a much darker operation. But who were the key players behind this? How high did the conspiracy go? And could these shadowy figures still be in control today? Let's take you deeper into the world of those who have protected the secret, and learn the true cost of exposing it. The investigation had reached a critical point. The vaults beneath Lake Shigawa, which were thought to be the final resting place of 42 missing children, were just one part of a larger conspiracy that had operated for decades. The documents, symbols, and coded messages revealed a disturbing truth: this was not just about a group of child abductors, it was a global network with its roots in government, private corporations, and intelligence agencies. As the team dove deeper into the evidence, they began to uncover the true extent of the conspiracy. It became clear that Elysium Technologies, the secretive organization tied to the children's disappearance, had ties to much larger entities that had been manipulating public opinion, controlling information, and creating false narratives for years. The AI simulations had already traced the financial transactions, showing how money had funneled into these covert operations, disguised as philanthropy, research, or humanitarian aid. These transactions were complex, with multiple layers of obfuscation, but they all pointed to a single conclusion: the people behind the vaults and the children's disappearance were not just rogue criminals, they were highly influential figures who had operated under the radar for decades. Who were these figures, and what had they gained from orchestrating such a massive operation? The investigation team now had to grapple with a terrifying question: had this network been in place for so long that it was now too deeply embedded in the fabric of society to be dismantled? As the investigators began to understand the scale of the conspiracy, the focus shifted to the key players. Using archival records, financial records, and modern AI analysis, they were able to identify several individuals who had been involved in the creation and maintenance of the vaults. These were not just small-time criminals or rogue agents, they were powerful figures in both the public and private sectors, with connections to some of the most influential corporations and government agencies in the world. The team started cross-referencing these names with historical events, political movements, and major corporate acquisitions from the 1950s onwards. What they discovered was astonishing. Several of the key individuals linked to the conspiracy were also linked to major global crises, including military operations, government cover-ups, and international corporate takeovers. The vaults were merely a part of the larger plan. These figures had been controlling the narrative for decades, shaping history, suppressing information, and using covert operations to achieve their goals. And what was their goal? Control, power, and profit. As the team dug deeper into the connections between the conspiracy and powerful corporations, they discovered a chilling pattern. Many of the organizations that had been involved in the creation of the vaults had also been involved in biotechnological research, including projects that sought to manipulate the human mind and body. It seemed as though the children were not just victims, they were test subjects in an ongoing effort to experiment with genetic and psychological engineering. The most terrifying revelation, however, came when the team uncovered a connection between Elysium Technologies and top government officials. These officials were not just passive bystanders, they were active participants in the operation, helping to cover up the conspiracy and protect the perpetrators from justice. Some of these figures were still alive today, holding positions of immense power in intelligence agencies, corporations, and political offices. It was a sobering realization. The very people who were supposed to be protecting the public were the ones responsible for hiding the truth and enabling these experiments. And now, these figures were more entrenched than ever. The investigation team knew that they were playing a dangerous game. Every time they uncovered new evidence, it seemed as though the conspiracy grew bigger, and the stakes grew higher. Exposing the truth was no longer just about finding justice for the children, it was about revealing a network that had shaped global events for decades. But the team was determined to continue. With every new revelation, the investigation team realized that they were getting closer to exposing the truth. They had already uncovered the outlines of the conspiracy, but now they needed to understand the true nature of the operation and how it had been able to thrive for so long. The emotional peak of this chapter came when the team uncovered a hidden meeting between several of the key players involved in the conspiracy. Using leaked documents, audio recordings, and AI-generated transcripts, the investigators pieced together a meeting that took place in the late 1960s between Elysium Technologies and several high-ranking government officials. In these recordings, the individuals discussed how to continue hiding the truth about the children and the vaults. They talked about covert operations, how to deal with whistleblowers, and how to silence anyone who might reveal the truth. One line, in particular, stood out: "We have the power to shape the narrative. We control the flow of information. No one can stop us." The recordings revealed a dark, chilling conversation that exposed the depth of the conspiracy, and it wasn't just about the children. It was about control, manipulation, and creating a system where the powerful remained in control, no matter the cost. These figures, it seemed, had no qualms about using human lives as pawns in their game. The team was stunned by the rawness of the conversation. The true scope of the conspiracy was beginning to take shape. These individuals had been manipulating the world for decades, covering up atrocities and engineering events to further their own agendas. But there was something even more terrifying in the recordings: a mention of new vaults, new experiments, and new plans. It was clear that the conspiracy wasn't over, it was still ongoing. The vaults beneath Lake Shigawa were just one chapter in a larger, ever-evolving operation that had never truly been exposed. The emotional impact on the investigation team was immense. This wasn't just a story about missing children anymore. It was a story about global control, human experimentation, and an unyielding network of power that had operated from the shadows for far too long. As the investigators prepared to present their findings, they faced an agonizing decision. Should they release the full scope of the investigation to the public? The information they had uncovered was so explosive, so far-reaching, that they knew it could shake the foundations of governments, corporations, and global institutions. The risk was enormous, but the truth had to come out. In the final moments of this chapter, the team made the bold decision to expose the conspiracy. Using a combination of leaked documents, recordings, and digital forensics, they began preparing their final report. They knew the risks. Many of the individuals involved were still in positions of power, and they could easily suppress or silence anyone who tried to uncover the truth. But they couldn't stop now. The story of the children of Lake Shigawa, once buried beneath layers of ice and secrecy, was about to be revealed to the world. The dark network that had concealed the truth for so long was on the verge of being exposed. The team knew that this would be their final chance to bring justice, not only for the missing children but for all the victims of this global conspiracy. But the real question remained, would anyone believe the truth? And if they did, could the conspiracy be brought down, or would it simply slink back into the shadows, hidden once again? What do you think about the dark network behind Lake Shigawa? How far do you think this conspiracy goes, and who do you believe was involved? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter, where we continue to unravel the shocking secrets behind this global conspiracy. The darkest secrets of Lake Shigawa are about to be revealed, but the truth is far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. As the conspiracy unravels, a shadowy force stands ready to silence everything. The final chapter in this chilling investigation is about to take you deeper than you've ever gone before. We've come a long way since the first sonar scan revealed the vaults beneath Lake Shigawa. We've uncovered a web of deceit, hidden agendas, and covert operations that have shaped the course of history. But what if we've only scratched the surface? What if the conspiracy isn't just about the children, it's about the future of the world itself? In this final chapter, we'll reveal what really happened to the missing children and who's truly pulling the strings behind the shadows. The investigation had uncovered layers upon layers of deception, but there was still one truth that remained just out of reach, the true power behind the conspiracy. Every piece of evidence, every document uncovered, and every AI model simulation pointed to something far more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. As the team moved closer to their final report, they realized that the vaults at Lake Shigawa were not isolated incidents, they were just one part of a larger, ongoing global operation that spanned continents and generations. The missing children had been pawns in a game that reached the highest levels of power. The investigation team had pieced together many of the players involved, but there were still unsolved mysteries. The identity of the mastermind behind this dark network had yet to be revealed. This individual, they learned, was someone with unprecedented influence, someone who had orchestrated the entire conspiracy for decades, keeping it hidden from the public eye. The vaults, the experiments, the global network, they were all part of a grand plan. But the deeper they dug, the more dangerous things became. The team realized that exposing the full truth would not only jeopardize their lives but also spark a global crisis. Powerful forces would stop at nothing to protect their secrets. The risk of crossing these shadowy figures had never been greater, but the truth had to come out. The investigation team, now facing mounting pressure from all sides, made their final preparations. They knew that once they exposed the full extent of the conspiracy, they would be walking into a maelstrom. The players involved in the operation had infiltrated every level of power, governments, corporations, military organizations, and had the means to cover their tracks at every turn. As the team went through the final pieces of evidence, they found a connection that left them stunned. The mastermind behind the entire conspiracy wasn't a single person, it was a network of powerful elites who had been working together for decades, pulling strings from behind the scenes. These individuals had deep ties to military contractors, private intelligence agencies, and shadow governments, all working in unison to control the global narrative. The AI models had finally connected the last dots, revealing that the same shadowy figures involved in the Lake Shigawa conspiracy were also linked to some of the most high-profile global events in history, including military coups, economic collapses, and even natural disasters. It was as if these individuals had been manipulating the world for their own gain, shaping history to fit their hidden agendas. But there was one terrifying detail that remained elusive: the true purpose behind the vaults and the experiments. The vaults had been built to contain something, or someone, but the question still lingered: what exactly were they hiding beneath the ice? The team was closing in on the answer, but as they ventured deeper into the heart of the conspiracy, they received a warning. A cryptic message from an anonymous source appeared on their secure channel, urging them to stop digging. The message was clear: if you uncover any more, you will regret it. Some truths are better left buried. With the message echoing in their minds, the investigation team pushed forward. They could feel the weight of the world on their shoulders. What they were about to uncover could change everything. They had reached the final step. The vaults were hiding something far more than just the missing children. They were hiding evidence of a global agenda that had been unfolding for decades. The AI's final analysis revealed the ultimate shock. The vaults beneath Lake Shigawa were not just part of an old covert operation, they were the beginning of something much larger. The experiments on the children had been part of a genetic project designed to create a new breed of human, one that could withstand extreme psychological manipulation and survive in harsh environments. But this project wasn't just about creating superhumans, it was about creating a new class of people who would be able to control the world's most powerful resources. The AI's final analysis revealed the ultimate shock. The vaults beneath Lake Shigawa were not just part of an old covert operation. They were the beginning of something much larger. The experiments on the children had been part of a genetic project designed to create a new breed of human, one that could withstand extreme psychological manipulation and survive in harsh environments. But this project wasn't just about creating superhumans, it was about creating a new class of people who would be able to control the world's most powerful resources. As the team reviewed the final piece of evidence, a government ledger dating back to the 1940s, they learned the true scope of the conspiracy. This ledger detailed the genetic project that had begun long before the children's disappearance. It showed the names of scientists, political figures, and corporate moguls who had been funding this operation, all while keeping the world in the dark about its true goals. The vaults were only the first stage. What had started with the children of Lake Shigawa had expanded into a global network of human experimentation, corporate control, and government manipulation. And this was just the beginning. There were more vaults, more experiments, and more secrets buried in locations across the world. But as the team pieced it all together, they began to realize something even more terrifying. The people behind this operation were still alive and still active today. The mastermind, a figure who had been pulling the strings from the shadows, was still in control. And this person was closer than anyone realized. The investigators had uncovered the truth. The conspiracy behind Lake Shigawa was not just a cold case, it was the beginning of a global operation that had been orchestrated by the most powerful figures in the world. But as they prepared to release their findings to the public, a shocking realization hit them: the network was still active. The final blow came when they uncovered a current address, a location where the mastermind behind the entire conspiracy was hiding. But as they tried to make their move to expose them, something unexpected happened. All communication was cut off, their digital trail was wiped clean, and the source of the final information they had uncovered was suddenly unreachable. As the investigation team sat in stunned silence, they realized that someone had been watching them all along. The dark network they had uncovered wasn't just a thing of the past, it was alive, breathing, and watching their every move. And now, they were targeted. In a final, heart-stopping moment, the team received a single cryptic message: "You've uncovered the truth. Now, get ready for the consequences. The game is far from over." And just like that, the truth they had fought so hard to uncover slipped away, swallowed by the shadows of the conspiracy. The vaults beneath Lake Shigawa were no longer the only secret buried beneath the ice. What would happen next? Would the truth ever be revealed, or would it be buried once again? The investigation had just begun, but with powerful enemies closing in, would they survive long enough to finish what they started?